Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second part of our Laserfiche 10 webinar series. Today's presentation is titled, What's New in Laserfiche 10? Thank you for attending this webinar today. My name is Brandon Buckwich, Technical Marketing Engineer at Laserfiche. Also returning back on the line with me today is Justin Pava, Technical Product Manager at Laserfiche, who will be answering questions at the end of the webinar today. So as we did previously last week, please feel free to submit your questions throughout this webinar. We'll try to answer as many as we can with our remaining time at the end. So we have a lot to showcase in our presentation today. Very excited to share these highlights with everyone. All right, so just before we dive into everything here, want to mention again that Laserfiche 10 is available to our community now. It was released back in Empower last month, so there's really no need to wait to try everything out for yourself, especially since a lot of the new features we'll be discussing today has really been directly inspired by customer input. So likely one of your requests may have been included with these updates we'll be showcasing today. So again, this webinar is the second part of our Laserfiche 10 webinar series. Last week, we dove specifically into Web Access 10, where we saw how it's really been overhauled, streamlined, and really made all the more responsive when you're working with your repository, no matter in your desktop, tablet, or mobile type of interfaces. So since we covered Web Access last week already, we won't be discussing it too much today, but don't worry if you missed it last week. We'll have recordings available for all these webinars here shortly. Okay, so today we'll be focusing more on our overall product suite, covering many new features, enhancements in forms, workflow, mobile, Laserfiche Discussions, which has been rebranded. It was previously known as Social BPM. We'll be discussing lastly the Laserfiche directory server as well. All right, and as a heads up for next week, for our third and final part of this series, we'll highlight a lot of new features available to you in Quick Fields, which has also been overhauled and reimagined for this release. This will be available around the end of first quarter of this year, so hope everyone will be able to attend our session next week to check out everything you have to look forward to in Quick Fields, and it'll be available to you very soon. Okay, so without further ado here, let's get going to feature updates to our first product we'll be looking into today, Laserfiche Forms. All right, so the first new feature in Laserfiche Forms that I'll be discussing is Teams and Enhanced Task Management. So Forms is our web-based application tool for capturing information and managing and participating in form-based business processes. And of course, the business processes that are mapped out there usually contain specific tasks. And in many cases, of course, there isn't always going to be just a single person performing a task. There likely might be a team involved of where any member of which could be assigned to handle a particular task. So to account for this, in Forms 10 now, you can now assign tasks to an entire team in addition to a specific individual. So specific users can be assigned to one or more teams, and processes assigned to a team will show up as a pending task in the inbox of all team members. And then from there, available tasks can be claimed by or assigned to specific team members, helping ensure that the tasks get divided out appropriately. Or you can also skip that step of manually assigning tasks and have the tasks just automatically distributed to members in a round-robin fashion. So to better showcase this, we'll show a quick overview in Forms. We'll be using an example of requests coming to an IT department team. The way that we've set it up here, the team has 3 members, Maribel, the IT manager, and Ian and Heather on the team as well. And notice that we can also create and assign roles to each member here. And these roles can be used with automatic assignment so that a value is specified in the form itself to determine who the task is automatically assigned to. So here in our example, we set up the process so that system access requests go directly to Ian, and new hardware software requests go directly to Heather. But troubleshooting requests go into the general pool where either member could work on it. So at this point, let's dive right into our demonstration. and take a look at the new task management and teams features. So here I've already logged in as Maribel, the IT manager. So here we can see our inbox, and we just go to tasks, drafts, history on the left pane here. And new in Forms 10 is this section here, teams. This will list all the teams I'm associated with. In this case, we just have the IT department set up, but of course, a user can be involved with multiple teams. So let's just dive into the IT department team selection here. And we can see the currently assigned tasks. This is the view we are in right now. So we can see assigned tasks. We can go to tasks that are currently available in our queue, and we can see completed tasks as well. So going back to assigned, as the team manager here, I can view all the tasks with the team, regardless of who they're associated with. And if I want to quickly see how many tasks each person has, I can take advantage of Forms 10's new column grouping and filtering. So when I click on the Assigned To column here, you'll see that not only does it sort, but also categorizes. So this makes it very easy to see my team member task allocation all at once. I can also collapse and expand in any section here as I want. And I can also sort by due dates to see the tasks by date ranges, when something's overdue, due today, tomorrow, so forth. And Forms also adds dynamic column filtering, which is accessible by clicking the filter button. This enables the filter button mode. So then, for example, I can filter the Assigned To column. If I just want to see what is assigned to Ian, I can immediately do that. If I want to see what Ian has overdue, I just select overdue, and we can quickly narrow down to that selection. So when I'm done with the filter mode, I can easily cancel this out by going to remove filters, exit out each one of these individually, or selecting this filter button again. So we're back into our main view here. All right, so let's take a look at what is in our queue for available tasks, and we see we have several lined up here already. So by selecting a task here, we can go to Show Details, and a new pane will show up here on the right. It'll show us a summary of the task, and we can also view the action history as well, and we'll be able to see when it was submitted. So since we saw Ian already had an overdue task, let's go ahead and reassign this task to Heather. The way we can do this is very easy. We have the overflow button here on the right side. That's what this vertical 3 dots here are for. But first, before I reassign it, I'm going to edit the due date. Very easy. We went to the overflow button, and then we'll select change the due date. Let's say we'll have it due at the end of the week and just say 6 o'clock. We'll save that, see that it has been updated. Okay, and then we will reassign that now to Heather. Again, we'll go back to the overflow button and reassign. And then we will go and assign that to Heather. But before we officially reassign that to her, I want to show you something really cool here. So here I have my window set up in Heather's view already. We'd see her task list set up. So before we reassign, I'm going to leave a note here as well. So when we select reassign, you can see that immediately pops up into Heather's view. There's no lag. You don't have to refresh. We can see that we will already be viewing the most up-to-date listing of our tasks here. All right, so at this point, let's just focus on Heather's view now. And you can see that we're in her normal task list right now, not the team-specific one. So tasks assigned to her both directly or through Teams will all show up in her main task list here, allowing her to see all of them together. And if she had tasks from multiple teams, she could click the team column here on the right side to group all the teams she's associated with together. So right now, we just have her with the IT department team, so let's just focus on that by going to the IT department specific view. And here you can actually see that she can both see Heather, her own task list, and Ian's. So right now, this is because we configured this view as open, so all team members can see each other's load and tasks, but you can also set up the team as closed, where only the manager can see everyone's tasks as well. All right, so here Heather will open up the task that was just assigned to her. And looking through this, we can also see the show details, summary again, action history. If we want to show the details here, we can see the note that Maribel provided as well. So looking through this, she realizes that she actually won't be able to take care of this ticket right now. Say she's going on vacation tomorrow. So what she can do here is actually reassign this back to the main team pool, and that's possible by there's a reassign button right here in the upper right corner. So we'll do that, and we'll select team, and we'll select IT department team to select it right back into the pool, and we'll reassign it from there. Okay, so the task has been successfully reassigned. It's back in the general IT team pool. So we can go back to available and see what we have on the queue here. We'll see that Kevin's request has been sent back into the IT department main pool. But as we're looking through this list, Heather realizes, well, there's another urgent and overdue task list here, and maybe she can address that right now. So she opens it up. Realize that she could do it, so then she can assign that to herself, and we can do that to assign to Meek button here on the right. All right, so you can see that has now been assigned to her, and she can immediately start working on it. So when she's starting to work on this, she can put some comments in here. As she's going through it, though, she realizes, well, she might need to check other things, so she might be starting on it. But she needs to check something else. So what she can do is actually save this as draft as well. So we can do that again in our upper right corner here and save as draft. So task has been saved as draft now. All right, so if we exit out of that, so what we should see is a save to draft icon showing up here. What will happen is we can go ahead and finish the task now, or we can discard our changes by selecting discard draft later. So this will just conclude the demo on task management. We'll return back to the slides here. So just to quickly summarize what we looked at the demo, in this demo we looked at several new features in forms in enhanced task management. We looked at the process of assigning and releasing tasks both from the manager and team members' perspective, as well as assigning task due dates. We also saw enhancements to working with tasks in the inbox, such as updating task lists in real time, the ability to save in-progress tasks as draft, and column grouping and filtering in our forms inboxes. All right, so next we're going to be moving from task participation to looking at some new features in the actual form itself. The first topic we'll be diving into is introducing built-in native calculation formulas, which I know has at least made things a lot more convenient for me when I start building out processes and forms. So I'm sure many of you have been using JavaScript to set up complicated calculations in your forms before, and we're happy to say now that this feature of built-in calculation formulas can really help reduce your scripting efforts here. Calculations can be added to any number, text, date, or currency field, and the calculations themselves use the open formula standard used by Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets. So if you're familiar with working with formulas there, this should be very quick for you to pick up. So to help demonstrate how easy and simple it is to apply these formulas, let's take a look at a couple basic examples here of what you can do. So in this first example here we're looking to return a submitter's age based on their provided birth date. So this would require some manipulation to do in JavaScript previously, but now you can just use the date diff formula here. It's a very easy and simple implementation. And basically this formula translates to calculate the difference between the value in the birth date field and today and return me back the number of years. And that's what the Y here at the end stands for. So you can see it's very simple here. And let's take a look at a little bit more involved. So in our next example here, it's a little bit more complicated, but you'll see it's also straightforward. So here we'll be combining multiple formulas to get a conditional result. So in this scenario here, we are calculating the total price for conference attendees when they register. And the complicating factor here is that the price changes depending on if this is before or November 20th, which is the early bird cutoff date shown at the top of the form. So basically this quick first formula here counts up the number of total attendees and places that in the total number of attendees field. Pretty straightforward so far. So moving on, the second calculation involved with the scenario might look a little bit more complicated at first, but it's also very straightforward. So what we're doing here is checking if today's date is before or after the early bird cutoff date, in order to determine which price to use. So then the formula then multiplies the total number of attendees, which we determined in the first calculation, with the appropriate price. So this will get us the correct final price at the bottom of the form, accounting both for the selected number of attendees and whether the early bird rate is still eligible. So you can see each of these calculations really was just an individual line and formula here. And you can, by doing this, this will really allow a large amount of power to your forms without really having to rely on a lot of manual scripting. Okay, so this is a quick slide here, but alongside the calculation enhancements, the number field has also been updated. It can now include one or more decimal places, and also automatically you can also support automatically adding the thousands delimiter. All right, another quick slide here, but another really cool feature in forms as well. We've introduced a new geolocation field type, and this is designed for entering longitude and latitude coordinates, so submitters can enter coordinates manually or tell the form to automatically determine the current location. And so this would be especially useful for situations where you're submitting forms through a mobile device and you want to automatically capture your current location. All right, so the next feature we'll be diving into, let's talk about some enhancements in lookup lists from external data sources. So this is made to be a lot more flexible in Forms 10. You have the ability to tie multiple lookups together across multiple columns and rows, and specifically choose the sort order, provide security as to what elements users can and can't edit as well. So in this screenshot that we set up here, we have a supply request form. It's sorted alphabetically by code, where users are unable to change the current codes, item names, and posted inventory quantities. But they can indicate how many of each item they are requesting. They can also add new items to the list, which can be written back to external data source and added to future lookups as well. All right, so moving on to our next feature, what I think is also very cool here, new internal processing enhancements help users work with more involved processes. So for example, more control is now available for parallel processing situations. So in this scenario, we have two sets of tasks that are simultaneously occurring here by different people. If either team rejects a submission, we really don't want the other team to continue to do their work, their portions of it. It'll just end up being wasted work, wasted time. So what we can take advantage of is this new signal intermediate event here. And basically what this allows is one part of a process to signal to other parts, regardless of if they are separate branches of the overall process. Another quick thing to point out here in the screenshot as well is notice in the bottom pathway here that the same person is involved in two consecutive user task steps. So first, they perform a task in step 1, then Forms would run some processing through workflow, and then that same user needs to perform an additional task. Forms 10 now allows you to directly load the next task when it's assigned to the same person, instead of requiring them to wait for an email notification and access it through that and continue the process from there. All right, so looking more at updates and enhancements to the process modeler, as processes get more and more complicated, it can be very easy to have really a complicated web of actions going all over the place. So to help mitigate this, you may have noticed in the previous screenshot as well, the dots we have on our process modeler now. So now we've enabled the process modeler to be grid-based, helping to provide a cleaner design that's easy to work with when you're mapping out your business processes. Another important feature to point out, another important feature on this slide here as well, is the process modeler now includes the ability to separate different aspects of your processes into distinct stages. So notice in the screenshot here, we define 3 stages in our hiring process. We have initial review, screening, and interview. So in addition to keeping the process model clean and clear, stages are also an important feature to take advantage of for tracking processes in the new operational dashboard. To provide a quick overview on this dashboard here, this is really a great way to gain quick perspective on your overall activity status progress. You can see the current status of your process, such as how many instances are currently running, where they are at a particular stage. You can see that it's the same processes, the same stages we set up in our process modeler earlier. And you can see how many tasks are at risk of hitting their deadline or already overdue as well. So of course, organizing your process into distinct steps helps to identify exactly where in the process each instance is at. And this operational dashboard is automatically generated for every active process and provides a way to quickly see your overall instance activity. So with that, that will conclude the first section of our look into Laserfiche 10 enhancements. So wrap up Laserfiche Forms 10 here. We looked at a number of new features in Forms 10. Among the most notable are the ability to assign tasks to an entire team, delegate them amongst your team members, save in-progress tasks as draft. You can come back to those later. You also can take advantage of native built-in calculations to minimize your scripting efforts. We've made enhancements to your lookups to increase flexibility and lookup capability. And we've also provided more control and better user experience across the forms process. We also introduced the process stages and the operational dashboard, providing a one-stop report for monitoring your process activity. All right, so let's move into the next product we'll be showcasing today, Workflow. So Workflow 10 brings a couple of really important upgrades, dynamic Word document creation, and a significantly tighter integration with Laserfiche Forms. So let's take a look at the dynamic Word document creation first. So this new Update Word document activity in Workflow 10 allows you to dynamically create Word documents from a base Word document template. So this is extremely powerful here. You can have the ability to automatically generate personalized letters, agendas, permits, forms, and really any other type of document that can be constructed using token substitution. And as an example here, we can use, in our example here, we'll see how we can use Workflow to dynamically generate invoices. So here you can see a base document already set up to use as our source template. We have tags in place already for the billing address, invoice line items, and invoice number. And then now, here is the document created by Workflow with all the tags dynamically filled in from our tokens. And any document based on a standardized Word template can really be generated in this manner. So this process makes use of the mail merge function in Microsoft Word. So this can also be thought of as field merging. So basically, any token you have from a workflow process can be used to generate the new document. So while the document creation actions are performed on Word documents, you can also choose to generate a PDF at the end of the process as well. So in this way, you can generate the appropriate type of document format for your particular scenario. Another neat thing here I want to point out is that you can also use barcode fonts for some of the base fields. So creating from base fields, creating barcodes from your tokens in the final document, which is what we've done here with the invoice number in the upper right. Okay, so the other major enhancement in Workflow 10 is enhanced interactions with forms. And this would center on two new activities, the Invoke business process activity, which launches a new forms process from Workflow, and the set business process variables activity, which lets Workflow pass information into forms processes. So essentially, Workflow can now send information to forms and can talk back to forms when forms calls into it. And this can greatly increase flexibility and power when we have both of these combined together. Great, so let's dive into each one a little bit more specifically here. So the first side of this is launching forms from Workflow. Again, this is an action that is now natively present as a Workflow activity. So this action allows you to initiate a new forms process while passing along starting parameters. So this allows you to perform actions like triggering a form process based off a document in your Laserfiche repository. So let's just take an example of a generic situation here, pushing out a document to an organization where employees must read the document and sign that they've done so. This could be in a situation where you had to take a look at an employee handbook update or changes to insurance policies. So in this case, all we would really need is a generic form for users to say, yes, I've read and understand this document. So what we can do here is just select a document in the desktop client or web access. We just have a generic document here set up right now, and we would start a business process on it directly from there. And this would start a workflow that compiles the people that needs to be sent to, and then it launches our generic form for the relevant employees. So when the employee opens up the form, they can see the relevant document actually already displayed in the web access document viewer, and that is directly embedded in the form itself already. So even more powerful here, workflow processes can be inserted right in the middle of the forms process as well, and directly impact the current process. So this will be taking advantage of the set business process variables activity. So a quick example of this, you might have a travel request process where the itinerary is submitted through forms, passed along to workflow and to calculate some mileage and reimbursement rates, and then that information can be sent back to forms to show you the price. So when launched from forms, workflow can populate any forms variables for the current process, and also note here that this ties in with the functionality to automatically load the next task that we looked over previously in the forms section. So whoever the initiator was will be able to immediately see the updates. So in this way, you can really leverage both the user-friendliness of forms with the processing power and flexibility of workflow to really create any number of processes here. All right, so a quick slide here as well. Workflow also now supports all the same formulas and calculations that we discussed earlier in the forms section. So greatly expand the ability to do all kinds of calculations on your tokens using the open formula standard. Another couple additional features we want to mention is that watermarks can also be applied to email attachments through workflow. So this matches the current functionality offered in Web Access and the desktop client. So where you can add a watermark to exporting documents. And then we also introduced the ability for workflows to automatically enable and update Microsoft Exchange out of office notifications as well. So with this update of Workflow 10, we've introduced a couple of really powerful new features. Again, to recap everything here, this will conclude the new features in our workflow portion of our presentation. We looked at the dynamic Word document creation feature, and this really lets us generate letters, agendas, or really any other type of form document from a base Word document template. Really powerful. And we also saw the enhanced interactions with forms, allowing workflow to respond to a forms process, filling in any fields with tokens from the workflow process. We also have shown how we have the ability to easily launch new forms processes from workflow and pass along starting parameters as well. Okay, so first we looked at forms, we looked at workflow. Let's dive now into some updates into Mobile 10. All right, so Mobile 10 has been updated to support all the new functionality in forms, most notably team task management. Just to explain the screenshots here. Here in the middle, we can see users assigning and releasing tasks to and from the general team pool through the mobile app. Laserfiche Mobile, you can also you can have sorting and grouping of tasks as well. So in this example in the right, tasks have been sorted by due date, putting tasks that are overdue or due today at the top of our list. If you recall from our last week's session where we covered Web Access, we mentioned quick access features, start entries, and recently opened documents. These are also available in mobile. Just to provide a quick recap, start entries allows a user to start documents and folders for future quick access. And actually, these entries can be starred in mobile, Web Access, and the desktop client as well. And the same starred quick access list is present in all three applications. It doesn't matter. So this quick access view also applies to recently opened documents as well, and this will be similarly shared across all three applications. Okay, so moving on to another feature here in Laserfiche Mobile. So Laserfiche Mobile provides the ability to manually edit photos on the device. You can rotate, you can crop, you can perform color conversions from your device's gallery or camera before sending them to the repository or attaching them to forms. Now, Quick Capture is a really cool way now to take advantage of this image editing functionality without even really having to be connected to the Laserfiche repository in the first place. So photos can be edited offline and set to upload to the Laserfiche repository when you're next connected. So you can do that from your start screen and you go into the captured document icon here. So you can also actually email these directly to others or even share them to other services such as Google Drive. So in these kind of situations, you can use mobile images editing, mobile's image editing functionality, situations where Laserfiche doesn't even necessarily have to be involved. Another really cool feature we've introduced in mobile as well is we've introduced the ability to add signatures directly to an image alongside our other image enhancements. So here, signatures allows you to sign with your finger or a stylus on your device. You can indicate the position and color, and then the signature is burned directly right into the original document. So really this provides an easy way for people to sign images and documents on the go while ensuring that your signature stays attached to the document. And signatures can be added when editing photos and documents for import to the Laserfiche document repository as forms attachments, or again, even complete offline through quick capture. All right, so that will conclude our Mobile 10 section. Just to provide another quick recap here. Again, we provided Mobile 10 now supports the forms updates, notably teams and tasks, ability with tasks. It syncs up with web access and desktop client to set and display your starred entries and your recently opened documents. We discussed also quick capture, which provides offline support for mobile's image editing functionality for later import into the Laserfiche repository, or even in situations that don't tie directly with Laserfiche. And lastly, importantly, signatures is a new feature that can be added and burned into documents and images when importing into the repository, uploading as forms attachments or through quick capture. Okay, so moving on to another topic here, Laserfiche discussions. Again, this was previously known as Social BPM. So Laserfiche discussions is our discussion and collaboration product, and this was first introduced as a preview in Laserfiche 9.2. So actually, those of you who use Laserfiche Answers are already familiar with Laserfiche Discussions, since Answers is built on top of the Laserfiche Discussions collaboration site. So Laserfiche Discussions is no longer a preview in Laserfiche 10, and we've introduced a lot of new exciting features. And some of you who, those of you who attended the Web Access 10 session last week may have already seen some of this, so we won't be going into too much detail here. But Laserfiche Discussions, along with Web Access 10, you have the ability now to provide, to have discussions directly on your documents and folders. And we know it's very common to have situations where you have, it's very common to have questions on a specific document or instructions about the next steps for entries to enter a certain folder. Now you can do that directly in the document viewer or folder browser. What will happen is each document is a single post, and there are 3 types of replies that we can use here: questions, discussions, and checklists. So questions will be your standard Q&A format where a person asks a question, others can directly reply, and then the original poster can then mark a question as the resolved answer. Discussion replies will be more of your ongoing conversation thread. And then we have checklists, which will allow you to create a checklist that both you and others can check off on. And you'll notice that it actually also lists who checked off on a specific item, as we've done here. So these discussions are tied directly into Web Access. You can easily jump between the 2 of them. We've started our discussion Web Access. We can go directly to the post and our Laserfiche discussion site. So in the screenshot here, the document itself is the post, and you can see the document itself is actually embedded directly into the post as well. This is our embedded Web Access document viewer that users can read the document directly from Laserfiche discussions. Also to note here, you can also do this with folders as well, which will embed the folder tree. All right, to introduce another feature here, versioning. On our internal end, we have an internal Laserfiche discussions that we use for discussions and collaboration in our product teams. And we use this throughout the Laserfiche 10 release for discussing and updating feature designs. And even for us, of course, it became very critical to be able to see what changed and when. And we were able to really take advantage of this versioning functionality. So versioning will allow you to view all versions of post, to see the evolution of the post content. You can also compare versions directly on the post to see exactly what changed as well. So here in our screenshot on the right, you can see that Jared has actually changed our URL, and we're able to clearly see the exact change here. Another new feature in Laserfiche's discussions is real-time notifications directly in the collaboration site. You can see the bell icon here in the upper right. This will indicate when you have pending notifications, and you click on it to view them. Posts, topics, or groups you've subscribed to will all show up in notifications. You'll also receive reputation notifications here as well. So if someone upvoted your post, you'll be informed here. So in addition to this notification log, Laserfiche Discussions also has real-time updates on replies themselves. So if edits are made to a conversation thread you are currently looking at, you'll be notified of this immediately and prompted to reload the post. All right, so here's a really fun feature we've introduced as well. Laserfiche Discussions now provides the ability to create and configure achievements, rank levels, and badges, and this will help reflect a user's helpfulness, involvement on the site. You may have already seen some of this in our answers site. This is really a great way to bring your organization into the site and provide reinforcement, incentive for their participation. Okay, so quickly recap on our Laserfiche Discussions section here. We've looked at the revamped discussions reply type with the ability to mark replies as resolved. We looked at questions, discussions reply type, and checklists. We also looked at both directions of integrations with Web Access 10. That's the Laserfiche Discussions pane on documents and folders, and the Web Access document viewer embedded in the Laserfiche Discussions collaboration site post. Okay, so lastly, we discussed using versioning to retain change log of posts, and we also saw real-time notifications and achievements and badges. Okay, so we'll be diving into the last feature we'll be covering in today's presentation. And this will involve the Laserfiche directory server for Laserfiche Rio. So the Laserfiche directory server was first introduced in Laserfiche 9.2 as an updated Laserfiche Rio license manager and brings some significant architectural enhancements in Laserfiche 10. So Laserfiche users are a new user type that is created, licensed, and managed directly through the Laserfiche directory server, and these will be basically the replacement for repository users. Repository users are users defined on an individual Laserfiche repository instead of a global directory service like Windows accounts. So if you ever needed to create an ad hoc user on one repository, that's what we consider a repository user. So those of you that are familiar with repository users know that they do come with some challenges. By being specific to an individual repository, there ends up being no centralized management. All accounts are independent of each other, and they can also be very inefficient in terms of licensing. So Laserfiche users now managed through the Laserfiche directory server will avoid these limitations, acting as one user account throughout the entire environment. So explain this in a little bit more detail here. Here's the current setup using manually created user accounts that aren't coming from Windows Active Directory or eDirectory. So on the left here, we have repository users in the Laserfiche server. On the right, we have forms authenticated participants. And in both cases, users have to be managed and defined in the individual application, licensed by pools of repository or participant licenses allocated just to that server. So we can see in this example, Jim actually requires 3 licenses, 2 repository named user licenses, and 1 forms repository forms participant allocation, even though it's all the same user. Jane would require an additional forms participant license as well. So with Laserfiche directory users, all user management happens on the Laserfiche directory itself. So this means I only have to create each of these users once, and they are known for all of the applications as the same user. And most importantly here, they also only require one named user or forms authenticated participant license, regardless of how many repositories or forms instances they use. So of course, this means you're making much more efficient use of your licenses. So basically, this addresses all of the current limitations with manually created user accounts. They effectively now act exactly like Windows accounts. I do want to also note that individual repository security, as well as determining access to a repository in the first place, is still all controlled in the individual repository or forms instance. Also, there's no requirement to use Laserfiche directory users in place of repository users as well, so you can feel free to migrate at your own pace. Okay, so since a Laserfiche directory user is one account managed across your entire installation, passwords are also now universal. Password policy can be set in one place on the Laserfiche directory server to apply to all users. And a user can update their password directly across the board without having to go one by one through each individual repository, as well as reset their password from one place. So Laserfiche users is one part of the new functionality provided by Laserfiche 10. The other is fully integrated sign-on, single sign-on across all Laserfiche web applications. In this scenario, the directory server itself handles user tokens and authentication instead of relying on the individual Laserfiche applications. So note that while this ties in very nicely with Laserfiche users as well, you can also take advantage of this with Windows directory or E-directory users also, which means you no longer have to really worry about Kerberos for integrated single sign-on. So by clicking the Login with Windows Authentication link, you will be automatically signed in through Windows Authentication without having to provide any user or password information. Very convenient. So having signed in through the Laserfiche directory server, you are now authenticated for all Laserfiche applications. In this case, we're prompted to sign in when accessing, when we're trying to get into web access. So having done so, getting into web access, we won't be prompted to sign it in again if we want to go to Forms. It already knows who we are. And Laserfiche Mobile as well, you can also switch directly from one Forms instance to another without having to sign out each time. So again, this also applies for signing out. Instead of having to keep tabs of signing out across all applications individually, signing out in one signs you out across the board, giving you clearer control on when you are and are not signed in. The last topic in this section here, with Laserfiche directory users and single sign-on, the Laserfiche directory server is now responsible for initial user authentication. And so it's critical that this is always available. So failover clustering support has been added, ensuring that an outage on the Laserfiche directory server will not take down your entire system. Basically, failover clustering is a group of servers working together to maintain high availability of the Laserfiche directory service through Windows clustering features available in Windows 2008 and 2012. So if the primary node serving authentication requests fails, the inactive node wakes up to take over the workload. All right, so that will conclude our look at the Laserfiche directory server 10. We looked at Laserfiche directory users, allowing you to create, manage, and license users all in one place across all Laserfiche applications. We also looked at single sign-on, providing the ability to sign in and out at once across all Laserfiche web applications. And we also covered that Laserfiche directory server now supports failover clustering as well. Okay, so this will actually wrap up the presentation on what's new in Laserfiche 10 for this session today. Hope everyone has enjoyed this walkthrough of Laserfiche 10. Again, this has already been released, so if you're getting your hands on it, it's already available to you now. As you can see, there's tons of new content available. Laserfiche 10, there's a lot to be excited about. Again, we have next week, the same time here, same place. We'll be diving into new features on QuickFields 10. Please look out for that. We'll have that available, and we'll be releasing QuickFields 10 here in the next couple months soon as well. So at this point, we'll be diving into the questions that our audience members have been submitting. And if we can't get to them, we will be submitting a list of the questions and answers here very shortly. Or, of course, please go into Laserfiche Answers, and you can ask all your questions there as well. So at this point, I'll be transferring over to Justin Pava. I'll be answering your questions. Thanks for everyone's attention today and joining us, and see you next week.
All right. This is Justin now. Thank you, Brandon, for the webinar. At this point, I'm going to go over the questions that you've submitted through WebEx. If I don't, we'll be compiling all the questions at the end and sending out an answer sheet. So please feel free to keep asking. If there's any that I don't get to, we'll still have a chance to answer them and provide that to you. So the first item is actually a couple licensing questions on Laserfiche Forms. First, is it a separately licensed module? And then also about, is it the same as in 9.2, where you have a Forms portal scenario where anyone can submit items, but you need to be an authenticated participant user or a named user in order to actually work on the task? And yes to both of those. Forms is a separately licensed module. That's for both Laserfiche Avante and Laserfiche Rio. And there's no licensing changes in 10. So there's still the Forms portal users, everyone can submit. In order to work with tasks, you need an authenticated participant user or a Laserfiche named user. Next question has to do with the calculations in Forms. Are the formulas similar to formulas that would be configured in Microsoft Excel? And yes, Forms uses the Open Formula Standard for its calculations, which is the same formula standard that's used in Excel, also used in Google Sheets. And Forms uses this, Workflow does as well for its calculations. So it's all the same, you know one, you'll be able to use them across the board. Does the dynamic Word document creation still require a placeholder to be specified in the Word doc? And is it possible to allow Workflow to populate a Word or PDF document dynamically for be useful for dynamic data sets of different sizes? Well, the Word document creation is new in Laserfiche 10, so it still behaves as it originally released since we haven't had a new version of it yet. Yes, there's no plans for it not to require a placeholder. You need to be able to tell Workflow where the variable is, you know, should be located to create the document. I am interested in what you mean by dynamic data sets of different sizes, so if you want to maybe elaborate on that a little bit in the Q&A. That'll give us a little more information about your question. Next item is, can you take a picture on a phone and easily attach it to a form? And yes, you definitely can do this. The Laserfiche mobile app allows you to take a picture, and while you're working on a form through the mobile app, when you attach when you get a point to attach an annotation, you can pull that directly from either taking a picture right then or pulling it from your device's photo library. Let's see. The question on in Forms, the ability to scan documents as part of the Forms process. There's no changes there, but if you can provide a little more information about your use case and what you're looking for, I can pass that along to the Forms team, and we can see if that's something that would make sense to incorporate in a future version. Let's see, will discussions only be available in Forms and Web Access, not available in the Laserfiche desktop client? At the moment, discussions is only available in either as the Q&A in the initial form submission process or in the discussions pane that's embedded into Web Access. We are looking to spread that to additional products. However, due to technical reasons for embedding it into for communication between web applications. It is specific to web applications, so we don't have plans to incorporate discussions into the desktop client at this time. It needs to be in web applications to take use of the single sign-on between the two applications to handle authentication. Does Laserfiche 10 have a SharePoint Online Office 365 integration? Web Access 10 introduced an initial integration with online import services called Cloud Import Services that supports browsing into OneDrive, OneDrive for Business, or Google Drive as your import location. So basically, when you go to import documents, instead of importing them from the Windows file system, you would actually import them from these external services. That's the extent of the integration at this point, but we are definitely looking into providing a more involved integration in Office 365, similar to our desktop Office integration. For the time being, you can always download the desktop version and use that. Let's see. Can you upgrade directly from version 8.3 to version 10? Yes, you definitely can. All of the products will upgrade themselves when you install on top of them. So if you already have, say, the Laserfiche 8.3 server or client or forms, well, not forms since 8.3, you can go ahead and just install the new version on top of it, and it will upgrade it to the current version, and all of your data is automatically updated. So for example, if you have an 8.3 database, you install Laserfiche 10 on top of it, it will recognize that you're upgrading from an 8.3 database and automatically upgrade that for you. Yeah, let's see. If you have additional questions, you can email it to Cecile. She provided her email in the Q&A feed. So if you have additional items that you aren't able to send here, you can send it to Cecile, and she'll get it to the development team. And I really appreciate sending on the additional user stories like that. One question we have on the Forms dashboard. For right now, the operational dashboard, really like it, which, you know, it's good to hear. We have data for the active tasks only. What about data for completed instances for specific time periods? So you can see reports on that. And actually, that's pretty cool. We have what's called performance dashboards, which is another reporting tool in Laserfiche Forms that we're working on right now. And that'll actually be included as part of the Laserfiche 10 Service Pack 1 release, which is scheduled for around April at this point. So actually, there's a number of new items that sort of expand upon some of the new functionality that we release in Laserfiche 10 that we'll have in this upcoming Service Pack release in a couple months here. So one of the things that we'll include will also be reporting on, say, the individual processes itself. So what's going on real time, what's in progress, things like that. And also, I'm sorry, the real time we have already for completed instances. So you can see what's actually been happening, and if there's bottlenecks, if things are going slower than they usually do, that sort of thing. Let's see, probably time for one more here. Can we recall forms variables after the forms process ends if there's errors and we need to re-enter the form again? This is in, so if a process ends, there's no way to restart the process. However, you can have it set up so it starts another forms process, or by making use of the workflow business process activities, you can have a situation where, for example, if there's something that comes up, an error scenario, it can tie in the workflow, and workflow can take the appropriate action. For example, starting up a new process that will take care of, the error scenario. And I think that's a good time for right now. We're basically out of time. Thank you so much for your questions. Again, if you've got more, you can keep putting stuff in the Q&A feed, and we'll look at them, send them around to the development team, and send out a copy of them. We'll also have the recording is available online, so you can access that as well. And then just looking forward to you joining us next week, same time, for a look at the upcoming release of QuickField 10. Thank you for coming.